let's go back to this, the concept of fame. You mentioned this before. I had Dan Bilzerian sitting on my show, and I said, can you rank the different factors that make women most attractive? And we were talking about status, pre-selection, what we call make choice copying, all those different concepts. And he goes, fame is the hammer. Fame is the biggest one of all. Can you go over that?
I'm in an episode recently that was called Being Famous is Like Being a Woman. And for you alluded to this earlier, where when I was an actor, not a very successful actor, but I was an actor in New York City.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a lot of trouble hooking up with women.
Yeah.
None of these women wanted me as a long-term partner. And in retrospect, I can understand why. I was basically living month to month. I was in a small studio apartment with roaches. I had this just vague plan about being a successful actor, and who knows how I was actually going to get there. I wouldn't have yoked my oxen to that lifestyle either.
Yeah.
But if you have swagger, you're cute enough, and you're a young man, you can pretty much make things happen. So that changed significantly when I actually began to devote a lot of attention to my lifestyle. And I went back to grad school, became a doctor, bought a house, got a nice car, started making decent money, cleaned up my act in a lot of different ways. I think I'm objectively a much better man, a much better person than I was when I was a young man. And yet it was harder and harder to date because no one really knew what I was doing. By virtue of my profession in particular as a therapist, no one can know what I'm doing. There's like 30 people in the world who know that if I'm any good or not, and they're not going to tell anybody. They're not going to leave 5-star reviews. Oh man, Orion helped me with overcoming my depression. I wanted to kill myself, or I was sleeping with hookers and doing meth all the time. It's like, that's not generally what happens.
Yeah.
Do you see that a lot? Because I know you obviously do a lot of consultations. Do you often see that it's often a lot of guys who are objectively very successful who are struggling the most? Especially
I wouldn't say struggling the most.
Yeah.
Success definitely softens any struggles you might have. I do talk to a lot of successful guys because my consultation rate is fairly high at this point.
Yeah.
And they do have different suites of problems.
Yeah.
Like, I guarantee that being rich is not a surefire way to get laid.
Yeah.
Like I've done consultations with multiple men worth 8, high 8 figures, maybe even 9 figures. They have parties that they pay promoters to bring all these women on their own super yachts, and they can't get laid.
What do you think it is that they're missing oftentimes?
Well, they're missing confidence.
Yeah.
Which is one of the 3 things that absolutely will get you laid as a guy.
Could it be that the bubble that was created for them because of their money is the reason they didn't develop the confidence?
It's possible. I have to go deeper into at what stage in their life they got the money.
Oh, that's exactly right. Yeah.
Really important to know. But yeah, certainly, just like being a very attractive woman, especially a precociously attractive woman, for better or for worse, they might not need to develop other parts of their personality.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And I know you talked about like when you were an actor, something you said in that video is that like you are the contextual alpha.
Yeah.
So it's almost better to
Which
be
is another way to get laid.
Exactly. So it's almost better to be like the big fish in the small pond than to compete with everything else.
Absolutely. If you can. If you can. The issue in today's dating environment, though, is that there are fewer and fewer small ponds.
Yeah.
And that's because of social media apps like Instagram in particular, where everyone is more or less swimming in one gigantic ocean. And men are competing for the girl next door against every other man on the planet. And women are competing for the most eligible bachelor in their small communities against every other woman on the planet. And it's taken people time to figure this out. I don't even think this is common knowledge yet. And it's certainly lost on people who got out of the dating market like even 5 years ago, let alone previous generations, our parents or our grandparents' generation. They're going to look at this and just shake their heads at this. It's anarchy from their perspective.
Yeah. Oftentimes we see this a lot because with Men of Action, the coaching program, a big demographic of guys that we work with are guys who were in a marriage. So they didn't get on Instagram. They didn't do all these stuff because they were in a committed relationship. Then they go through a divorce. Now they're thrust back into the different market than they were in before.
It's so hard. It's almost like, imagine coming out of prison.
Yeah.
And it's like there's something called the internet. Can you imagine?
Or marriage. Yes, I got you. Yeah.
But it's so different today. Like if you're trying to rely on the strategies that worked even 10 years ago, let alone 25 years ago, in today's dating scene, you're going to be run over.
A lot of my clients got married before the advent of Instagram in 2012, 2011, and then have gotten divorced. And And it's like when I try to explain to them the importance of having an online profile, they're annoyed initially.
Of course.
And then later on, they come to the realization that it's absolutely the only chance I have.
And just to be clear, I'm not saying that it's impossible to get
Sure.
relationships. It's just that you have to change your strategies.
Yeah.
The strategies no longer work because the game has changed significantly. The way I describe it to some folks, especially those who are re-entering the dating market after divorce, is remember how like 10 years ago, if you're running a business, if you didn't have a website, you were functionally invisible.
Yes.
Like it didn't matter how successful your brick and mortar was, you needed an online presence to stay relevant. Nowadays, it's not enough. You need to have social media.
Yeah.
You need to have a social media presence to have a successful chance as a man in particular in today's dating market. And nobody likes it. I dislike social media. I don't have the apps on my own phone.
Really?
I don't know.
You have someone manage?
Someone else does
Absolutely.
the
I don't get
YouTube
high on my
everything?
own supply,
Yeah.
dude. It's like those apps are dangerous.
They are, yeah.
You have to be very cautious about the content that you
Be
consume.
a social media producer, not a social media consumer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful tool. I think it's more powerful than a nuclear bomb.
Mm.
And we had some evidence of that in recent history, but I think people still haven't really realized that.
Mm.
And yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the reasons you're naming all these names. And unfortunately,
No, of
I
course.
don't know a lot of these people.
Yeah.
It's like for my own sanity, because I do know that I have addictive propensities, I have to put pretty rigid limits on what I expose myself to.